This is World Report. Good morning. From CBC News, I'm David Common. One of the most emotional and controversial issues in Canada's healthcare system is queue jumping. Private clinics where people pay for treatment and skip the line. And that is at the heart of a major court challenge in BC that starts today. Some say Canada's system of universal healthcare is at stake. Mira Baines explains.
Dr. Brian Day is the medical director of the Cambie Street Surgical Centre. The private clinic is challenging the BC government in court today.
We live in the only country on earth that outlaws private insurance for its citizens for medically necessary services.
His private clinic has been running for 20 years. He's come under fire for illegally charging patients for services. Day, a former president of the Canadian Medical Association, is arguing people should have a right to choose private medical treatment if they aren't getting it in a timely way from public health care. It's taken 8 years for the allegations to head to a Vancouver courtroom. He says 2 patients out of 6 involved in the case have since died.
One of whom is paralyzed for life after spending 27 months on a wait list to get into BC Children's Hospital for serious spinal surgery. So this is about the rights of Canadians.
Critics argue Day is trying to destroy Canada's public health care system. Simon Fraser University professor Karen Palmer believes if Day succeeds, the result could be even longer waits for public health care.
So the outcome of the trial would likely be that those who can pay would be able to jump the queue, drawing doctors and other resources, nurses, out of the public system and then into the private pay system.
The federal government is among the interveners in the case. The trial is expected to continue into December. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
A small Canadian charity is pushing back against the Canada Revenue Agency. The CRA has put some charities under a microscope for their political activities. The law, begun under the former Conservative government, strictly limits those activities. Now, as Dean Beebe reports from Ottawa, one charity is launching a constitutional challenge.
Canada Without Poverty is a tiny charity working out of a cramped office in downtown Ottawa. In 2012, it was targeted for an audit of its political activities under a controversial program begun by the Conservative government. And last year, the Canada Revenue Agency delivered a devastating verdict. Tax auditors said almost everything the group did was political. That's against tax rules that limit political activity by charities to just 10% of resources. So the government began a process that could strip the organization of its charity status. Now Canada Without Poverty is fighting back, launching a charter challenge, arguing the Income Tax Act violates guarantees of freedom of expression in Canada's Constitution by gagging charities. The group wants the federal government to either justify the law in front of a judge or to change it and let charities lobby freely. A big Toronto law firm has taken on the case for free, and it could last more than a year. The challenge is being watched closely by charities. Some 16 of them are still under audit for their political activities, and another 5 are already facing the loss of their ability to issue tax receipts for donations. Dean Beebe, CBC News, Ottawa.
A meeting between Barack Obama and Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte is off. Those two were supposed to meet on the sidelines of a meeting in Laos, but yesterday, Duterte was asked what he would say if Obama challenged him on his policy of extrajudicial killings of drug dealers and failing to respect human rights. Duterte responded by calling Obama the son of a whore in the Filipino language Tagalog, then said this in English.
I am a president of a sovereign state, and we have long ceased to be a colony. I do not have any master except the Filipino people.
The Philippines, of course, was a colony of the United States. Duterte has since said he regrets his comments, says they were not a personal attack on Obama. Canada's Prime Minister has wrapped up his China tour in Hong Kong today. Justin Trudeau's agenda primarily focused on trade, but he also honored those Canadians killed in Hong Kong during the Second World War. The CBC's Susan Lunn reports.
Like many prime ministers before him, Justin Trudeau visited the Saiwan War Cemetery in Hong Kong. 283 Canadians who served in the Second World War are buried here. Trudeau came by to sign the visitor's book and lay a wreath. He then spoke before the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, where again his focus was on trade.
Canadian goods and services are among the best on the planet, and our businesses deserve to have greater access to the large and rapidly growing economies of China and other Asian countries.
Trudeau also spoke about resetting the relationship between China and Canada to allow for greater trade and frank discussions about human rights. He has arrived in Hong Kong a few days after elections that saw many pro-democracy candidates win seats. Trudeau was asked for his reaction, but he gave the same answer he gives when asked about Donald Trump possibly winning the White House.
Canada will work with whoever gets elected and forms government.
This wraps up Trudeau's 8-day trip to China, and he says while there are always challenges, he's happy with the tone of the meetings he's had with political and business leaders here. Susan Lunn, CBC News, Hong Kong.
El Salvador's national soccer team says it has refused a bribe to fix today's World Cup qualifying match against Canada. In a hastily called news conference, the players said they'd been approached by a businessman to throw the match. They allege that man made the offer on behalf of Honduras, whose team is in the same qualifying group. The players said they could have made as much as $3,000 each. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights says he fears the rise of right-wing populism, and Zeid Ra'ad Al Hussein says electing the likes of Donald Trump and right-wing leaders in Europe could lead to widespread violence.
Communities will barricade themselves into fearful, hostile camps. The atmosphere will become thick with hate. At this point, it can descend rapidly into colossal violence.
Al-Hussein challenged the world to begin speaking out against demagogues. A new school year can be an anxious time for children, and it can be especially difficult for those who arrived here from Syria. In an effort to help the new students, researchers are looking at how the upheaval of war affects a child's learning and development. Here's our health reporter, Vicadopia.
I got my dog.
Amani Al-Habayan gives her 7-year-old son Safi a head start on English. She moved to Mississauga with her husband and 2 young boys this summer after fleeing the war in Syria 4 years ago.
Because Safi was afraid all the time because of bombing and start to bite his nails.
Safi doesn't speak of the war anymore, but his mother worries the bombings will haunt him.
I think these things are still in his mind.
I mean, one of my earliest memories was of war in 1996.
Mazen El-Baba immigrated from Lebanon a decade ago. The graduate student is now leading a study tracking 75 Syrian children like Safi who are part of a special summer camp in the Toronto area, testing everything from their literacy and reasoning skills to impulse control. The young refugees have a wide range of abilities. El-Baba says he's also seen some troubling behavior.
When they feel that they are doing something bad, that come to you and say, well, then I'm going to hurt myself so that I won't do that again. It's very extreme.
The study's results are intended for educators and support groups that want to help young refugees succeed. Developmental psychologists often refer to the resilience of children in terms of dandelions and orchids. One can flourish anywhere. The other needs special care.
Big red dog.
Oh.
Vicadopia, CBC News, Mississauga.
Well, now, some big news from here at CBC News. After 3 decades as anchor of The National, Peter Mansbridge is announcing his departure.
It's been an amazing time to report our history, but I've decided that this year will be my last one. As someone who believes strongly in public broadcasting, leaving the CBC's flagship will not be easy. But what's important is that the National of the future will continue to reflect our world, our country, and our people.
Peter will continue to anchor The National until Canada Day next year, Canada's 150th birthday. Now, in his time, Peter's conducted more than 15,000 interviews, mentored many, many journalists in that time. In fact, he actually spoke at my high school more than 20 years ago. That was a big influence for me, talking about public broadcasting, talking about working as a journalist. You'll find more about Peter's career and all the other news of the day. That's on our website, cbcnews.ca. I'm David Coleman, and this is World Report.
It's 20 minutes before 7. This is the St. John's Morning Show on CBC Radio 1, 640 AM on your dial, or now also on television. A lot of people on Twitter saying, okay, who's going to replace Peter? Well, he's not leaving in any time soon. It'll be Canada Day next year before he's gone. It'll be interesting to see if the heir apparent becomes obvious, or whether, in fact, the National stays as it is. Who knows? A big time of change in media, not just the personalities, but late-time television news in the United States and in Britain has gone through a revolution of what it should be. People not staying up late to watch TV news the way they used to. Interesting. Peter Mansbridge deciding to step down. As far as the weather goes, a beautiful day. It's going to be a gorgeous September day. It's 13 degrees right now. A little windy out there. You've got some southwesterlies gusting between 40 to 60 kilometers an hour. We're going to get to a high of 23 degrees, which is actually quite nice. The humidex could be a bit sticky, though. We actually see that up around 25, 26. Increasing cloudiness in the day. And you should really take a chance to enjoy today, because for the rest of the week, it looks like gray conditions with rain. Tomorrow, Wednesday, gray conditions, and it's going to be rainy as well. The high tomorrow, 25 degrees. As far as traffic goes, let's see if there's much more. You got one ferry, the Flanders sailing the Tickle. You've got some slowdowns as well on Blackmarsh Road. This is the Empire to Canada Drive. They're replacing a water main. City of St. John's replacing a water main there, so watch out for that area. Also, work being done in Paradise. This is to widen Topsail Road between Christopher Street to Thomas Line. You'll see lots of delays there as well. If you see something you should know about, by all means, let me know. Pound 640, that'll put you in touch with John Soper in our newsroom, and he'll get your traffic info to me just as soon as you can. Or you can send me a tweet. Just use that hashtag #NLTraffic, or send your tweet at Anthony Germain. Coming up later on the show, Apple founder Steve Jobs once said everybody should learn how to program a computer because it teaches you how to think. Programming or coding hardly exists for young children in the Newfoundland and Labrador school system. Do you know what Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter, and Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, do you know what they have in common? They all started coding as kids.
I was 13 when I first got access to a computer.
My parents bought me a Macintosh in 1984 when I was 8 years old. I was in 6th grade.
The programmers of tomorrow are the wizards of the future. You know, you're going to look like you have magic powers compared to everybody else.
So how are young Newfoundlanders going to have magic computer coding powers if the school system doesn't offer them the right education? Tune in at 7:20. We'll talk about coding and the Newfoundland and Labrador school system. Going to go to the big school now, Memorial University. It's one of the largest universities in the country. MUN is also the country's best deal when it comes to tuition. But now, after 14 years of frozen fees, the university's administration is mulling over the possibility of an increase. The CBC's Jonathan Crow dropped into orientation yesterday and asked students what they think about paying more.
I'm Lucas. I'm from Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Did you come here in part because the tuition is lower?
Yeah, it's a lot easier when the tuition's a lot lower.
What do you think about the possibility of it going up next year?
It'll make it a little harder, but I don't know, it's still one of the cheapest in the country. I don't think it'll be that bad.
Robin Penny, I'm from Grand Falls.
Robin, what do you think about the university looking at the concept of putting up tuition fees?
Well, I came here from Western Ontario last year. I went to university in London, so it was a lot more expensive up there. So the fact that tuition's going up here, I think it's upsetting because like one of MUN's big hits is that it's low tuition.
But I guess even if it does go up, it's among the cheapest tuition fees in Canada.
Yeah, it still is, but I think one of MUN's big hits is that it's low, so it'd be nice if they kept it that way.
I'm Simukai Goman from Zimbabwe. If it's going to benefit the university, like at the end of the day, to a greater extent, then I think it will be okay. But I know a lot of people come here because of the really affordable tuition, so I'm not that sure now.
Ryan, I'm from Gander. Well, I mean, it's going to be harder to pay, but we need the education, so.
I'm Jennifer Kearley, and I'm from Gander. I think it's really crazy just because, I don't know, the whole budget thing was just kind of a mess anyways, but it's not as big of an impact as I think a lot of people are thinking about because compared to the rest of Canada, we're still doing really wicked.
I don't really like it because, you know, paying more money is never a fun thing to do. I have to pay for my housing, pay for tuition, buy all the books, pay for classes, food, everything. So it's a lot.
From India, I'm Kalyan. Yeah.
I personally don't like the rise in tuition fees because being international students, for us every penny is a matter. I mean, for the Canadian citizen and students and citizens over here, it's just $1. But for us, being international students, for us $1 equals to 50 pennies of our currency. Yeah. So we are going to see even 10% is a very huge thing for us. So we are paying around $8,800 on the tuition and all the insurance, etc., and everything is going upon $12,000 per year. And as the on-campus housing is very costly, so we chose off-campus, and it's being around $800 per month. So I personally don't like the tuition rate.
Some students, you could tell that student from Pakistan not pleased with the tuition or possible tuition increase. Of course, foreign students got to keep in mind, unlike the $2,500 that local students pay, foreign students pay $8,800, something like that. Still a deal compared to some of the other tuitions. Take a look at Dalhousie, University of Toronto, very expensive tuition rates. What do you think? It's been 14 years that the fees have been frozen at Memorial University. Is it time for an increase? You know the situation the province finds itself in. What do you think? Give the Morning Line a call, or does MUN remain attractive by keeping its tuition rates low? 576-5259, toll free 1-866-576-5259, or send me a tweet at Anthony Germain. 14 minutes before 7, here's Calgary singer-songwriter Laura Mann. The song's called Brave Face.
Change of mind. Set course in love, make stops on the way, frame all the finest memories. Set course in love, make stops on the way, frame all the finest memories. Set course in love, put your heart on the line.
It's Laura Mann. The song's called Brave Face, 10 minutes before 7. "50 years ago today, Canada got its first look at a new TV show, and it was called Star Trek. Although, as my kids call it now, Old Trek. It was cancelled after just 3 seasons, but thanks to syndication, books, 13 movies, and a total of 6 TV series with a new one on the way, Star Trek has lived on, and it's gained quite the following. Now, here's an interview. This is with a Sacramento TV station, because back in August of 1966, nobody knew what Star Trek was all about. Here you're going to hear William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy trying to explain what Star Trek was all about.
What is the plotline? Well, I'll tell you, seriously, what makes it different from any other show on television is that it's really science fiction. Science fiction in the best sense of the word. It's exciting drama, action, adventure, placed in the future. The stories will involve human beings in jeopardy. Sometimes me, I play Captain Kirk of the spaceship, sometimes other people, but although there are monsters and fights and runnings and carryings on, it has to do with people, and that's what science fiction, true science fiction is.
Are you in charge of a spaceship that travels around there?
Right. Well, the Starship Enterprise, as we call it, is a spaceship patrolling somewhere out there. In the same way the naval vessels in the 18th century patrolled the outer reaches of the empire, and we perform the same tasks, the dispensing of justice and supply, medicine, war. We're assigned any mission that Earth might feel necessary.
I'm here usually about 6:30 in the morning. We actually start shooting at 8. The crew arrives around 7:30. It takes me about an hour and a half to get into the rig. Yeah.
Okay, let's find out a little bit about yourself. How did Leonard Nimoy get into showbiz?
Well, I'm from Boston originally. I've been in Los Angeles working in films off and on for about 17 years. I played a film producer, a film actor-producer on an episode of The Lieutenant Show, which was produced by Gene Roddenberry, who then created Star Trek and had me in mind as a result of the Lieutenant thing for Mr. Spock.
Well, I think it's one of the fine series on the air, and I certainly hope it continues.
Leonard Nimoy, and before him, Canada's own William Shatner, talking about Star Trek in an August 1966 interview with a Sacramento TV station. The original series made its world debut on Canadian television. It was CTV at the time, 50 years ago today. All right, and now to a sportscaster who will boldly go where he goes every morning, John Hancock.
I think the Klingons got to the quality of that news, that interview. That was cool.
Yeah,
boy.
I know. I think a phaser hit it or something. The audio. Well, that tape gets old over the years, right? If it's not digitized.
It's scary, isn't it?
50 years ago. Long time ago.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I didn't realize that Mr. Spock, he actually did have a Boston accent.
Yeah, he did sort of, didn't he?
Vulcan from Boston.
That's right. Well, it's September. That means Labor Day Classics in football. We've got lots to get through. Let's talk football. It was all Calgary yesterday, the Battle of Alberta. They beat Edmonton 45-24. Just wanted to mention that prior to the afternoon kickoff in Calgary, a fly past of CF-18 Hornets was followed by a moment of silence in memory of Normie Kwong, a man with strong football ties to both cities, former lieutenant governor of the province. He played for both Calgary and Edmonton over his 13-year CFL career. He died Saturday at the age of 86, and the Alberta government says there will be a public state memorial for Normie Kwong, the legendary football player that played so many great years in the CFL. And 2 former Toronto Argonauts burned their old team. Zach Collaros threw 4 touchdown passes, including one to Chad Owens, helping Hamilton come back from a 27-7 deficit to beat the Toronto Argonauts 49-36. To baseball, well, the Blue Jays are sputtering. They took the early lead, but the Yankees came back for a 5-3 win. Jacoby Ellsbury hit a 2-run homer off loser R.A. Dickey. Dickey's 3rd pitch of the game. Ellsbury later had an RBI single. And manager John Gibbons?
Yeah, they hit Dickey around today a little bit. We scored, and they came right back with a 2-run homer, to take the lead. I thought it was a little inconsistent, knuckleball today.
Now, the Jays were lucky because Boston lost 2-1 to San Diego. Boston stays a game back. Edwin Jackson struck out 11 in that Padres win. And Baltimore is just 2 back after their 7-3 win over Tampa. So let's not forget the Orioles. And the Yankees aren't giving up. They're only 3.5 back in the wild card, 5.5 in the division. Detroit stayed tied with Baltimore for that second wild card spot after beating Texas in extra innings. Houston 2 back in the wild card. They beat Cleveland. San Francisco and St. Louis hold down the wild card spots in the National League. St. Louis beat Pittsburgh behind the pitching of Adam Wainwright, who also drove in 3. The Mets stayed a game back of the Cardinals for a wild card spot. Shutout Cincinnati, Bartolo Colon, and the bullpen combined for the shutout there. Dodgers moved 4 ahead of the Giants in the NL West. Dodgers beat Arizona yesterday. Both Washington and the Chicago Cubs, division leaders, won their games yesterday. Canada's women's baseball team's a step closer to the medal round at the World Cup in South Korea after a 7-1 win over Netherlands. That gives Canada second place in its group. Japan first. Super round begins on Wednesday. Go Team Canada. Heather Healy, right from Paradise, playing with this team.
That's right. Yeah. No, it's great. And she's apparently she's worked on her changeup now as one of her deadly pitches. Yeah, keep an eye on her.
Well, we'll be keeping an eye on that as the tournament gets
She's a
even more
really,
interesting.
really pleasant person to interview, too, by the way.
Let's see. Let's stay with some local sports here. Fieldians beat Gonzaga 12-9. St. John's Intermediate Baseball to keep their playoff hopes alive. Doug Clark got the win there. There are 2 intermediate games tonight, 8:30 at St. Pat's. Fieldians play Storm, and at 8:30 St. Pat's. And at Mount Pearl at 8:30 Shamrocks meet the Knights. Senior Baseball League resumes play tonight with 2 games. St. Pat's at 6, Holy Cross and Shamrocks, while also at 6, the Knights play the Storm. And St. John's Senior Men's Fast Pitch Softball season continues tonight at Lions Park as well. Anthony, we should mention that Soccer Newfoundland Labrador named its award winners in the Challenge Cup League for the past season.
Yes, and there are quite a few.
Yeah, let's wade through them because it's worth it. Bobby Breen Memorial Award, first overall in the regular season, Holy Cross, right? The Jim Goff Memorial Award for Most Spirited, Trevor Ivany, CBS. Yep. The Ed Moist Award, Rookie of the Year, Logan McIsaac, Corner Brook. The Jeff Babstock Award, Top Defender, Mark Pittman of St. Lawrence. The Johnny Breen Award, Top Midfielder, Zach Wade, Holy Cross. Wills Malloy, is it? Golden Boot Award, Top Goal Scorer.
Correct.
Stefan Slaney of St. Lawrence. Stephen Slaney. Dick Power Memorial Award, MVP regular season, Zach Wade of Holy Cross. And the Gerard Quirk Memorial Award for the MVP in the playoffs, John Douglas of St. Lawrence. So congratulations to all of you.
Yeah, to all of you. It's nice to see the prizes actually spread about. Sometimes you'll see one star who takes 3 of them. I think I don't see any repeats there. That's kind of cool.
Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not really ready for the World Cup of Hockey. I'm just not ready for hockey yet, but it's coming up in less than 2 weeks.
Even the people
Camps
who aren't,
open.
even the people, sorry to interrupt you, even the people who aren't ready are really looking forward to seeing Carey Price.
Well, let's hear from Carey Price, who's in the training camp in Ottawa.
This is real fast, crisp. Everything's smooth, and it's just a joy to be out there. Like, I had a big smile on my face all day just being out there with these guys.
Well, if he's happy, we're happy, because if he's healthy, I like Canada's chances. We're going to see him. Canada's first exhibition game is on Thursday. The tournament starts on the 17th, so really looking forward to that. And Serena Williams moved past Roger Federer for most Grand Slam wins. Her 308th yesterday. She beat Yaroslava Shevdova to reach the quarterfinals of the U.S. Open. Her sister Venus, though, lost her match to Karolina Pliskova. And that's all the time we have. Oh, Rory McIlroy, by the way, won the PGA Deutsche Bank Championship. He was 6 shots back going into that final round, and he finished 3 ahead of Paul Casey.
Wow.
Who kind of collapsed. So
That's a
nice
big
win for him. Absolutely.
I'll talk to you tomorrow.
I'll see you then.
That's John Hancock reports on Twitter of a moose and a calf on Paradise Road near the K&D grocery out there, so be careful if you're in that area, the mom and the calf. Coming up after the news with Maggie Gillis, David Brazel and Earl McCurdy will join me, 2 politicians. We're going to talk about full-day kindergarten. Obviously, there's some people who think it's worth it and it's got some benefits from an educational point of view. There's also the fact that it comes with a hefty price tag at a time when the province says it can't afford all that much. Stay tuned for that. And we'll also get some advice for parents during this very stressful back-to-school time. And that advice is going to come from experts who know what they're talking about, children. 13 degrees in St. John's. A beautiful day is ahead. We're looking at a high of around 23 degrees. Time for the news. It's 7 o'clock.
Good morning. We begin on the Northeast Avalon, where firefighters were kept busy overnight. A house on Symes Bridge Road was heavily damaged in a fire reported around 3:15 this morning. A nearby garage was gutted. Earlier in the morning, 2 cars were destroyed in a fire on Cadogan's Road in Logie Bay. Firefighters in CBS were also called to a vehicle fire last evening. In that case, a car was burned out at the construction site of a new school. Families of victims of crime are speaking out about their experiences in the court system in this province. Last week, 2 families were asked to leave the courtroom because they displayed photos of their loved ones. That struck a nerve with people who have gone through a similar process. The CBC's Ariana Kelland reports.
Serena Wadman went to dozens of court appearances for her sister's killer, and every time she brought a laminated photo and button bearing Triffy Wadman's face. Not once was she told to remove it from the courtroom.
Triffy never asked to be killed. We need to keep her present. We need to keep her with us, and we need to keep her with the system.
That's why it made her angry when she heard stories last week of grieving families being told to remove tokens of their loved ones or remove themselves from court.
My heart broke for that family.
Wadman says she felt the rights of the accused trumped those of her and her family. Terry Lee Coates agrees. She says the man who caused an impaired driving crash that killed her brother didn't have to show up to court.
I've watched the video of my brother being killed hundreds of times, and he got to sit home with his family.
Both women say judges should be able to remain neutral, and that removing photos of their loved ones is just adding to their grief. Ariana Kelland, CBC News, St. John's.
The president of CUPE in Newfoundland and Labrador says none of his members have talked to government about the proposed closure of 54 public libraries. The Liberals delayed the closures this summer pending a review. Wayne Lucas says the libraries have been given a stay of execution, but he had hoped his members would have some input.
I just can't get over the fact that closing down libraries during a time when the economy is bad, that's like closing down a hospital during an epidemic. And we think this government is just tone deaf about it.
The province has offered up no timeline for the library review. A surgeon and medical researcher says a smartphone scanner she and a colleague have developed could have a big impact in Newfoundland and Labrador. Karen Cross, who is originally from this province, says the small device would allow diabetics to monitor the condition of their feet and send the information to their doctors. Cross says the idea is to prevent foot infections that can lead to amputations. She says 30% of people who have a limb amputated due to diabetes die within a year. 70% die within 5 years.
A device like this, and we know prevention. So if you put something in place where people are being monitored, they're getting accurate treatment, we can actually reduce those rates dramatically. So not only can you save their limb, you can actually save their life.
Testing is already underway, and if all goes well, the device could be on the market in a couple of years. Cross doesn't know what the price tag will be, but she wants it to be as cheap as possible. General Motors has settled 2 federal court cases in the U.S. related to its defective ignition switches, but its legal troubles stemming from the switches are far from over. 3 more federal cases are scheduled to be heard next year, and 1 is scheduled for January 2018. GM knew about the problems with the switches for more than a decade before it finally recalled 2.6 million small cars worldwide in 2014. The switches are responsible for at least 124 deaths and 275 injuries. New students at Memorial University are not happy to hear talk of a potential tuition hike. MUN Students' Union said last week that administrators are considering raising tuition next year. Students at orientation events in St. John's say low tuition was a big factor in why they decided to attend Memorial. Robin Penny is from Gander and went to university in Ontario last year, but is starting at Memorial in St. John's this week.
I came here from Western Ontario last year. I went to university in London, so it was a lot more expensive up there. So the fact that tuition's going up here, I think it's upsetting because like one of MUN's big hits is that it's low tuition.
Canadian students currently pay $2,550 for 2 full semesters of study at Memorial. International students pay $8,800. And that is your CBC Morning News. I'm Maggie Gillis.
You're listening to St. John's Morning Show. I'm Anthony Germain, and I'd like to officially welcome Chrissy Holmes as a part of the team in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning, Anthony.
Good to see you. I'm glad you made it.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. Yeah, I got the coffee. Instructions, check.
Excellent. As you probably know if you've been listening or following Twitter, Chrissy is going to be a huge part of the morning show team here. She is going to be our lead reporter, bringing you some of the best stories from in and around the city. Those stories could be serious, they could be political, they could be financial, they could be trendy. They could be all kinds of things. So, Chrissy, on your first day, what have you got for us today?
Yeah, but again, you getting ready for that, Anthony? A lot to live up to, right?
I know,
we're kind of
no
all
pressure.
over the map.
No
No
pressure.
pressure at all. Well, tomorrow is the first day of school, as you know, and a recent study, this is really interesting, actually, a recent study done by the Canadian Association of Optometrists found that many parents actually turn a blind eye to their children's vision health. And the consequences might be a lot more dire than you might think. All kinds of seemingly unrelated, learning issues seem to pop up with that.
Yeah.
So we're gonna take you inside that world to a family that learned, I guess, just in time, and so we'll have that for you in the next half hour or so, and lots of other stuff coming up the week.
All right, besides original stories, Chris will be keeping an eye on pretty much everything from breaking news to traffic, and the thing that comes up at least once a day in conversation here in the province, and that is the weather. It's pretty windy outside the studio. What are we looking at today, Chris?
Yeah, still pretty windy, Anthony. Actually, those southwesterlies gusting between 30 and 50 kilometers per hour, all thanks to our buddy Hermine. We're sort of
yes.
in this warm tropical air mass here now, and we're going to be inside of that for the next 24 hours. Mostly for today, though, going to be a nice mix of sun and clouds. Still pretty cloudy out there right now. Those going to start to clear off a little bit more as the day goes on. 23 degrees is the high. Going to feel more like 25 with all that humidity. Headed for a low of 17 tonight, and that's when we're going to start to feel some of those showers associated with our buddy Hermine. So warming things up a little bit inside that tropical air mass. Actually going to feel more like a July day and a July evening.
Nice southerly warmth to it, but it is a bit windy out there. I'll talk to you shortly.
All right.
It's Chrissy Holmes, a new member of the St. John's Morning Show team. Out there on the road, you got road work continuing on the Outer Ring Road. It's down to 50 kilometers an hour between Logie Bay Road and Torbay Road, and also from Paradise to Thorburn. So you got some slowdowns out there. Somebody sighted a moose and a calf on Paradise Road near the K&D Grocery. You got the City of St. John saying expect some delays because you've got detours on Black Marsh and Empire to Canada Drive. They're working on a water main out there. If you see something I should know about, pound 640, put you in touch with John Soper. He'll take your traffic info. Coming up in just a bit, kindergarten. It all starts tomorrow. It was a Liberal promise. Should it have been a promise that they kept? We'll debate the merits and costs of kindergarten here on the St. John's Morning Show. Full-day kindergarten starts this week for the first time for the English School District. Obviously, it's a great thing for many parents, particularly moms, but some people say schools aren't ready for this, and others say it's a expensive waste of taxpayers' money considering the financial shape that the province is in. Now, we did ask Education Minister Dale Kirby to come on the show this morning, or actually any day this week, but his communications person told us that the minister is unavailable for any interviews this week. I do have two people with me, though, to look at the merits of kindergarten. PC education critic David Brazel is in the studio, as is NDP leader Earl McCurdy. Gentlemen, good morning to you both.
Thanks for having us.
So let me start with you, Mr. Brazel. Are the schools ready for this?
You know, I'm being told that a number of schools are not ready. There's been a lot of work done, and I give credit to the Eastern School District and the administrators for putting that in place. The bigger issue here is around the fact that, you know, myself and we as an administration previously were committed to all-day kindergarten. The issue that we face right now is that we're not ready for it from a financial point of view, and we would never implement all-day kindergarten at the expense of other things in the school system, and that's what we're seeing now. You know, there's a loss in the quality of education when it comes to some of the other challenges there. classroom sizes, the blended classrooms itself, teacher training, busing, supervision, loss of things like intensive core French, and the list goes on and on. School lunch program for itself. So that's, while we say it's a good thing and it should be implemented, and we took the lead on it. Right now, we're saying this is not the time.
$20 million price tag, is that right, per year?
Yes,
Something
it is.
like
That's
that?
20 to 30.
Mr. McCurdy, what do you make of it?
Well, our party has supported the principle of all-day kindergarten. Believe it, the evidence supports that it's it's a good investment in kids. Having said that, we don't support doing it at the expense of other parts of the education system, including the increased class sizes, the multi-grading, and all the other things that went on. And I share the view Mr. Brazel just said that the schools aren't really ready for it, at least some aren't, and that the idea is a good one that should be implemented as soon as it can be put together, but not at the expense of those other programs.
Right, but you're not against it starting this school year, are you?
Well, it's now done, so whether against it or not against it, we don't agree with doing it at the expense of those other programs. And when the minister says, well, that was separate, we did, but it wasn't. I mean, if they said they made a priority decision to put money into all-day kindergarten, which meant that money was not available to maintain the class sizes and to avoid the blended grades that they've now come up with. So really, it was done at the expense of those. Those
other programs. What about the actual price tag? I mean, I think Mr. Brazel's point is that at $20 million, correct me if I'm wrong, but perhaps it would have been a good idea to wait a year maybe. Because we have, as you know, I mean, a lot of your union friends are going to be probably in trouble when this mini budget comes down. Maybe the province should have delayed it just to save $20 million.
Well, they shouldn't have done it this year if they're going to do it at the expense of the other programs. So I guess that means they shouldn't have done it because they did it at the expense of the other programs.
Right.
Well, exactly. And the protests that you saw that were going on for, over a month wasn't about whether or not all-day kindergarten was important, because everybody believes it is. It was about the fact that this was going to have a detrimental effect on other components of the education system. Intensive core French, the blended classrooms, cap sizes, all the other things relevant to it. That became the issue. So there was no plan, another evidence that there was no plan by this administration to figure out how the process here should be about encouraging and sustaining, but improving the education system. When you take 300 teachers out and you boast that you put 135 back in, that's not a good equality there.
What about the politics involved in this? Because it's a shame Mr. Kirby wasn't available any day this week, because one of the questions for political observers is that this is a government that's under a lot of pressure for not being able to keep its promises. This was a big ticket item. Do you think that part of the pressure here was that they sort of found themselves thinking, well, we got to keep this promise?
Well, I think I suppose they had to find one to keep somewhere, but the minister, to say the minister's not available the whole first week of school, the education minister is not available to do an interview on a matter of such public importance, I think is ridiculous. If he wasn't available this morning, I'm quite sure you would have been glad to accommodate a panel tomorrow morning or to interview
We tried
him.
that, but
no. Say he's not available all week. It's just not good enough. This is the first week of school, and he's the Minister of Education.
Let me ask you another policy side to kindergarten is that one of the things that I think makes it attractive in all jurisdictions in Canada isn't just the pedagogical benefits of starting kids in full day, but it unleashes a certain amount of economic power in that parents, usually women, can actually send their kids to full day and they can actually get jobs and work. And with half day, it's much more difficult. Is that one of the benefits of this?
That would certainly be probably not the driving consideration. I think the driving consideration would be the educational aspects and the opportunities and development of the kids. But that would be probably a side
because
benefit.
Mr. Brazel, I think part of it is, yes, it's $20 million, but if you unleash a whole bunch of women who are going to get jobs and pay taxes, then the $20 million is not such a big price tag.
No, and you're right. The caveat here is that we're being told by a number of parents that it really doesn't solve that issue, because with the school changes in the busing that some kids are going to be leaving earlier, there's still an issue with after-school programming. There's an issue about after-school daycare. Some daycares are saying we can't free up positions for 2 hours. We need to either have a full half-day program where we bring in staff to do that, which is going to leave some parents without the ability who had it in the past to be able to actually guarantee they have after-school programs for their kids or after-school daycare. So it's a catch-22 here. While it's important that we, open up every opportunity for anybody to get in the workforce, particularly women who want to rejoin the workforce itself. Mm-hmm. But the issue here is there was little planning, definitely no dialogue between the daycare centers, the after-school programming, even the busing programs, let alone all the other entities there from school lunch and these type of things. So again, it's another example of how no planning was done. Now, to live up to a promise, they didn't have to do that.
But on the other hand, I guess one could say, Mr. Brazel, that you mentioned that you and the Conservatives took the lead on this, but you never pulled the trigger on it, whereas at least the Liberals have actually launched this thing. Why didn't you guys do it when you had all that money, say, 7 years ago?
Well, again, I mean, the whole process was looking at exactly where the priorities were at that time, and there was a number of other priorities. When you had mold in classrooms, when you had counseling issues, when you had special needs children, they became the priority. Not that all-day kindergarten isn't important.
Right.
You had to prioritize what was there, and we saw that from the Autism Society. We saw that from teacher training. We saw it from capsizes. So we started to knock one each off that we saw were the priorities. All-day kindergarten is very important. The issue here becomes, because of the economic situation, if you do all-day kindergarten, you're doing it at the expense of a number of other students. And the same students who, in a year or two or three, are going to be looking for programs, are going to struggle in certain areas because of class sizes or access to programs.
Quick last question for you. If the price tag is $20 million a year, we start it this year, that means over the course of the mandate of this government, you're looking at $80 million, right? They have considerable amount. Would you be at all sympathetic to the idea that perhaps they try it this year, and if it has a huge number of problems, canceling it?
Well, I guess on anything you have to. I mean, to me, government always has to be not only willing but practice the idea of reviewing programs to see if they continue to meet, or if they meet, and if they can then continue to meet the objectives that they were set up for. So I think, like anything, you have to constantly review it in comparison to other priorities, because, as you say, it is a big ticket item.
Brazel, get the last word.
Yeah, again, the same thing. You review every program to see that they're worth their investment. The issue is the big infrastructure costing has been already invested. You've already spent that. That's why you're at a detriment to the rest of the education system. It's much harder to take away something that's been there and people expect it, as is happening now with intensive core French and the blended classrooms and these type of things, than it is to delay implementing something.
Right.
They missed the ball on this one. They had an opportunity. They could have said, look, if even the PCs and the NDP had said, look, we're not ready for it right now. It's not the priority when there's other things to keep moving forward in the education system. They didn't take that. If it's one of the promises they wanted, it's one, I think, at the end of the day, that I hope doesn't be detrimental to all the students in our education system.
David Brazel, Earl McCurdy, thank you both for coming in. I think we're in for quite a week as we all head back to school and back to work. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
That's education critic David Brazel and NDP leader Earl McCurdy. As I mentioned, we did ask Dale Kirby, the Minister of Education, to take part in this discussion, but his communications people told us that he is unavailable for any interview for the duration of this week. It's 18 minutes past 7 o'clock here on the St. John's Morning Show. I'm Anthony Germain here with Chrissy Holmes. Chrissy, anything going on the roads? I know we saw a moose out there in Paradise with a calf. Anything else going on out there we should know about?
Yeah, let me get that up here now, Anthony. There's a few little things that are coming up here. Dangerous. No, that's not what I wanted to say.
I do know that the city's doing some work. I know on Black Marsh through Empire, Canada Drive, they're fixing a water main there.
Yeah, quite a bit of work on the go. We've got a section of East White Hills Road down to gravel right now. Like you say, there's road work continuing on the Outer Ring Road. So some of the speeds are down to 50 kilometers per hour, particularly between Logie Bay Road and Tor Bay. Also from Paradise to Thorburn. We're still seeing reports of that moose and calf on Paradise Road. Not exactly sure if they're still sticking around there near Katie Grocery, but do keep your eyes open because it wasn't too long ago that those were spotted there. But yeah, quite a bit of I guess I'll say
it's like
road
post-Labor Day
signs
blues, yeah.
Still left around the road. Unclear if those if they're in operation, but as we heard last week, I mean, you have to obey the road signs. Traffic is down, so speed limits are what they are. You got to obey the signs.
It's 13 degrees out there, heading to a high of around 23. It's a bit windy, but we're in for a beautiful day of sunshine.
Yep, 23 degrees is where we're headed. 13 degrees right now. Nice, humid. Going to feel more like 25 degrees, Anthony. I'm Chrissy Holmes, new to the St. John's Morning Show this morning. Glad to have you with us here this morning. With school starting tomorrow, there's a lot of preparation to get those kids ready. We're talking everything from lunch planning, new clothes, transportation plans. The list goes on and on and on. So we figured we'd collect some advice from parents, and where best to start than with the kids themselves. The CBC's Gavin Sims spoke with a handful of second graders, and here's some of the advice they had to give on planning back-to-school lunches.
What would you suggest your parents pack for your lunches this year?
I would tell them that to pack not like bananas or kiwi or some stuff like for allergies. I would like some, I don't know, like noodles. I can't, this is hard. No kiwi, no bananas, and no broccoli, cauliflower, or any other vegetable. They should pack one Bear Paw, one Rice Krispie Square, one juice box, and one lunch.
Is that what you had last year?
Tried to keep it in order, but it didn't quite work out. I would like chocolate chip cookies and milk, and a couple of blueberries, extra big and sweet, and my best friend in my lunch bag. Me. And its dog.
I'd like my parents to pack cookies, ice cream that does not melt, a unicorn, a really big mansion house, and
For your lunch?
yeah, and also some honey and some blueberries and some strawberries, all the berries that there are.
Some children and their wisdom. Ice cream that doesn't melt.
Ice cream that doesn't melt. Yeah, a few blueberries.
Gotta get working on that.
I would like ice cream that doesn't melt in my lunch too, Anthony. But
Wouldn't mind it myself.
yeah, we'll
Bit
see if
early.
that happens.
Not right now. We're staying with our back to school theme this morning here on the St. John's Morning Show. Up next, what do the founders of Facebook, Twitter, and other high-tech great companies like Facebook, what do they have in common? They all coded as kids.
I was 13 when I first got access to a computer.
My parents bought me a Macintosh in 1984 when I was 8 years old. I was in 6th grade.
The programmers of tomorrow are the wizards of the future. You know, you're going to look like you have magic powers compared to everybody else.
This year, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, a former teacher himself, said Canada needs to do a lot better job of getting young people to understand what coding is and how it's important. In Europe, there are countries that are teaching children as young as 5 how to computer program. In Canada, where education is the responsibility of the provinces, it's a bit of a mishmash. My next guest says Newfoundland must take the right steps to ensure computer coding courses are offered to our young students. Otherwise, they simply won't be prepared for the future. They won't be those wizards of the future. James Flynn is the founder of Code NL, and he joins me in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning, Anthony.
James, I'd like you to start off by defining a term that's pretty hot in education circles, and that's digital literacy. When we say digital literacy, if we say it correctly, what does it mean?
So digital literacy is about more than just learning how to use the keyboard, which was the focus of probably schooling 20 or 30 years ago. It's about more than learning just how Microsoft Office works, how to use Word or PowerPoint. It's about kind of developing a fundamental understanding of computers and how they work.
Mm-hmm.
So digging beneath the surface, beneath kind of web browsers and things like that, and actually figuring out what makes them run. So that's looking at the lines of code that make them run, the circuits that make them run, just kind of develop a broader understanding of computers.
So a deeper understanding other than just the user using a mouse or, I mean, this is actually typing the language to give the computer commands, right?
Right, exactly. So today what you see is basically everyone is a consumer of technology. So many people today have laptops, they have cell phones, they have all kinds of different devices that they use. And they use these for kind of basic functions. They use their apps. They use their web browsers.
And
they use word processors.
most of us don't realize that there's a program doing almost all of the things that we're using our smartphones, our tablets, our computers for every single thing.
Right, exactly. The computer is the most advanced piece of technology of our day. I mean,
so how good a job is the provincial government doing to promote this digital literacy in our school system?
So right now, not a great one. So Newfoundland and Labrador, when it comes to computing education, is very far behind other provinces. So British Columbia just announced in January that they're going to introduce computer science into the curriculum starting this year.
For which grades?
For all grades.
Oh.
So starting in kindergarten going to grade 9 is mandatory, and grade 10 to 12 right now are optional. But that's going to change in a few years, and it's going to be mandatory for everyone.
And this is following this trend in Europe, right? I think in Britain and Finland,
That's right.
They've started with 5-year-olds.
Mm-hmm, yeah, so England was one of the first countries in the world to mandate computer programming for students. So they start children as young as 5 learn to code in class. You're right. Finland, Britain, South Korea is a great example. Israel has a very rigorous computer science curriculum. And the thing you see about all these countries is that they're all technology hubs. So South Korea has a huge advanced technology sector. Israel has a huge advanced technology sector. And that's no coincidence. That's because these countries are training their students in computer science and giving them the tools they need.
India. I wonder if sort of keep the focus on Newfoundland for a bit. You think about the stagnation of oil prices, the collapse of the fishery. Where's the economy of the future? We always hear, oh, it's high tech, high tech, high tech. But how are we going to make it that way if we don't have people learning this kind of coding in the public system?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one thing I should note is that advanced technology is already a huge industry in Newfoundland. So according to NATI, it includes over 165 companies, nearly 4,000 employees, and generates over $1.6 billion in annual revenue. So it's already a big industry in Newfoundland, but what we want to see is we wanted to make it bigger. So you're right.
Well, and also, who's going to get the jobs of the growing industry? Is it going to be people from here or people from British Columbia?
Right,
or
exactly.
Finland?
Right, and
or
what
England?
Exactly. Yeah. And what you see right now is a lot of Newfoundlanders end up having to leave to pursue jobs in technology, so we want to bring it back here.
And just a point I want to clarify, James, is that it used to be when we're talking about people doing this kind of coding in their education, it was because the expectation was these would be people who would actually go into computer science-related fields. There's been a big change in that, right? I mean, we're not talking about do this coding so that you can be a programmer, right? I mean, in terms of agriculture, fishing, all of those areas with technology, it seems to me that the move to do coding is just so you'd be better at using the technology for that particular field.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, in computing jobs alone, I think by 2019 there's going to be 180,000 jobs in information communications and technology. But aside from that, more and more industries are requiring their employees to learn how to code. So many lawyers today are learning how to code, many government employees, many oil and gas employees. So whether you're an engineer, whether you're working directly with kind of computer software or not, you need to learn some type of code. I mean, even using Excel functions, that is to an extent coding. Mm-hmm. So basically, many people use this in their jobs already. They may just not realize that that's what they're doing.
They're heading back to school tomorrow. I know from our discussion on Twitter, a lot of parents and a lot of teachers saying this is the way to go. So let's say I'm a parent and I really want my kid to get this. If I'm not going to hire a tutor, somebody bright like you, to do this on the side, what can I tell my school? What can I tell my school principal? Or what should I do if I want coding to be part of my kid's education?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things that you can do. Advocacy, like you said, is obviously a big one. So that's talking to your child's teacher, talking to your child's principal, maybe writing to your MHA, and just letting them know that computer science is important and that you want to see it in the curriculum. So what we've seen in the past year is that many schools have taken up an hour of code. So in December, Code.org, a not-for-profit, runs this free hour of code, and schools across the province can adopt it.
Right.
So that's one thing they can ask their teachers to do.
At least opens the door.
Right, exactly. But aside from that, there's many free tools that they can use, both online and offline, that their children can use to learn how to code. So Scratch Junior, it's a comprehensive website, app, and programming language. It's for children as young as 5 to learn how to code. There's some books. Hello Ruby is a picture and activity book that teaches how to code. Hopscotch is an app that teaches children how to code. But if parents are looking for their children to limit their screen time, they can also learn programming concepts offline.
Right.
So basically, computing is all about telling the computer processes. So there's all kinds of different ways that they can do it.
All right, James, I got to wind things down. Always good to talk to you. We'll see where this goes. I know there's a lot of interested parents out there on Twitter already. Good to see you again.
Great. Thanks so much, Anthony.
That's James Flynn, the founder of CodeNL, a nonprofit group that works to improve computer programming education. Give me a call. The morning line number, 576-5259. What do you think, and how would you change the curriculum to make room for coding? Just a couple of minutes before World Report. Chrissy, how about the weather?
Well, it is going to be a beautiful day as soon as those clouds clear away, although it's still feeling pretty tropical out there right now. 13 degrees, headed for a high at 23 degrees. And Anthony, it's going to be one of those humid days, going to feel more like 25 degrees, not going to get much cooler into this evening as I guess the effects of Hermine sweep across. We're looking at some overnight showers or drizzle. Otherwise, though, feeling like a July kind of a day, and tomorrow looking to be quite the same, actually, maybe a little wetter, but yeah, we're still going to be looking at highs in the 20s for tomorrow. So feeling quite summery.
But after World Report, stay tuned. Chrissy's going to bring you a story about how sometimes, for more often than not, parents are neglecting the eye and vision health of their children. Stay tuned for that. As far as the roads go, you've got road work continuing on the Outer Ring Road. It's down to 50 kilometers an hour between Logie Bay Road and Torbay. You've also got some work, some city work, detours at Blackmarsh from Empire to Canada Drive as they're replacing a water main there. If you see anything I should know about, you can let Chrissy and I know. We're both on Twitter, at Chrissy Holmes, at Anthony Germain, or use that hashtag NL Traffic. And you can also let our newsroom know, pound 640. That'll put you in touch with John Soper. It's 7:30.